Renji Takamori was not killed by a sword, a monster, or a battlefield wound. His family was too polished for that. They killed him with paperwork first. The Judgment Hall of House Takamori was built to make people feel small. Tall pillars, red banners, polished black floors, and a ceiling painted with old war victories where Takamori knights stood over monsters with glowing blades. Renji had stared at those paintings since he was a child, and even back then he remembered thinking the same thing every time. None of those heroes had ever fixed a leaking roof. In this world, that kind of thought made him strange. In his family, it made him useless. He stood in the center of the hall with bruised ribs, a split lip, and two guards behind him like he was dangerous enough to require ceremony. His older brother Daigo stood near their father's chair with his sword at his hip, and that lazy smile nobles wore when the truth had already been buried. Duke Masanori Takamori sat above them all, cold-faced, silver-haired, and perfectly dressed, as if condemning his own son was just another border tax decision. The charge was negligence during the Western Fortress breach. That was the official version, the clean version. The version written by clerks who had not been there when Renji warned them the old reservoir wall was cracked, when Daigo laughed in his face, when the pressure rupture weakened the ravine barrier, and when ash jaw wolves poured through the gap and tore 17 soldiers apart before dawn. Renji had been the one saying the system was failing. Daigo had been the one in command. But Daigo was the heir, and Renji was the son nobody knew what to do with. So the family chose the cheaper truth. Renji had been strange from the start. He was born into a medieval fantasy world of sword aura, noble bloodlines, holy magic, monster cores, and priests who charged poor villagers silver coins to bless dirty water. But inside his head were memories from somewhere else entirely. Modern Japan, apartment lights, school uniforms, convenience store rice balls, solar panels on rooftops, vending machines humming in summer heat, hospital corridors, clean taps, trains arriving on time like miracles nobody appreciated. He remembered dying too, though that memory stayed locked behind something sharp. A crosswalk, headlights, the smell of rain on asphalt, then a baby's body, a noble cradle, and a world that thought drainage was less important than sword forms. Renji never told anyone he was reincarnated. What was he supposed to say? Hello, Father. I used to live in a world where people trapped lightning in wires and stored cold food in humming boxes. Also, your castle's plumbing is disgusting. He was smart enough to know that sounded like madness. The problem was, even when he stayed quiet, his hands betrayed him. As a child, he drew pumps instead of dragons, water filters instead of heroic crest. When other noble boys begged for ore instructors, Renji asked for copper scraps, glass, measuring string, and access to the storage rooms. By 10, servants were calling him brilliant. By 12, knights were calling him broken. By 15, his father had stopped inviting him to councils and started treating his ideas like a family disease. Then came the blessing test. Daigo awakened sword aura strong enough to crack a training stone. The family held a banquet. Renji touched the crystal and nothing happened. No fire, no wind, no divine shimmer, no noble miracle. The crystal stayed so dull the priest tapped it twice, like maybe Renji had offended it personally. After that, the whispers became easier for everyone. The third son was clever, yes, but clever in the wrong direction. Clever like a servant. Clever like a craftsman. Clever like someone who belonged near pipes and ledgers, not banners and blades. Only Mika listened. His little sister had weak lungs, sharp eyes, and the kind of stubbornness sick children develop after hearing adults whisper for too many years. She would sit wrapped in blankets by the window while Renji explained that mold behind the walls could hurt her breathing, that boiled water mattered, that sunlight could be used better, that a room could be cooled through airflow instead of prayer. Mika used to smile and say, "Brother, you talk like an old man trapped in a young body." Renji would laugh because it was dangerously close to the truth. Mika was not allowed in the judgment hall. That was how Renji knew his father understood cruelty better than anyone. Mika would have screamed. She would have coughed blood before letting them call him guilty in silence, for her protection. Renji knew what that meant. They had locked away the one witness whose tears might have made the room uncomfortable. But Sayo Minazuki was there. His fiancée stood near the side pillars with her father, dressed in pale blue silk, her long dark hair pinned with silver ornaments. She had once laughed at Renji's drawings, but not cruelly. Back then she called them strange and beautiful. She said his mind went to places other people could not follow. Renji had believed that meant she wanted to try. He was young enough then to mistake softness for courage. When the steward finished reading the charges, Duke Masanori looked across the hall and asked whether any witness wished to speak. Sayo's fingers tightened around her sleeve. So did her father. For 1 second she looked at Renji like she wanted to say something. Maybe not enough to save him? Maybe only enough to tell the room he had warned them. But noble life trains hesitation into people until it becomes a second language. Her father leaned close and whispered one sentence. Sayo lowered her eyes. That silence did more damage than Daigo's lies. Duke Masanori lifted a second document. The Minazuki family has requested dissolution of the engagement contract. The hall did not gasp. Noble halls rarely did anything so honest. The room simply adjusted quietly like a machine accepting a new gear. Renji's exile was one matter, the engagement was another. A disgraced son could not remain tied to a respectable house. Everyone understood. That was the ugly part. Everyone always understood when cruelty wore the right seal. Sayo stepped forward because her father nudged her. In her hands was the blue ribbon she had tied around Renji's practice sword 2 years ago, after he lost a tournament badly, but refused to quit because Mika was watching. It had been a silly little token, nothing politically important, but Renji remembered keeping it because it came from a time when he thought someone outside his sister might still choose him. Sayo held it out. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was small, and Renji hated that it still sounded familiar. Daigo smiled behind her. Renji looked at the ribbon, then at Sayo. "For breaking the engagement, or for waiting until I was already bleeding?" Her face went pale. That was unfair. He knew it was unfair. She was scared. Her family was pressuring her. This world punished women who made politically stupid choices, and standing beside a disgraced third son was not brave in a pretty way. It was expensive. It could ruin her future. Renji understood all of that. He also understood that she had chosen. Sayo whispered, "I can't go against my house." Renji nodded slowly. "Then at least don't pretend this was fate. Your house told you to step back and you stepped." The ribbon trembled in her hand. Renji did not take it. After a long, painful moment, Sayo folded the ribbon herself and placed it on the floor between them. That somehow hurt more than if she had thrown it. Duke Masanori's voice cut through the room. "Renji Takamori, by authority of House Takamori and the Border Court, you are stripped of inheritance rights and granted stewardship over Sungrave Lot 7. You will depart before sunset. If you return to Takamori territory without permission, you will be treated as a deserter." Sungrave Lot 7. The name moved through the hall like a smell. Everyone knew what it meant. A dead frontier claim south of the border. No wells, no villages, no shade. A desert so hot, even raiders crossed it only when desperation had already eaten their judgment. Giving someone Sungrave land was a legal way to say, "Die far enough away that we do not have to clean the floor." Daigo leaned close as guards took Renji by the arms. "Try to survive a few days. If you die too fast, people may call father cruel." Renji looked at his brother's hand resting on the sword hilt. The golden aura blade Daigo loved showing off. The blade that had never once repaired a broken wall or saved a starving village. "You still haven't fixed the reservoir," Renji said. Daigo's smile disappeared. If Renji was being erased, he wanted to leave one splinter under the heir's skin. The carriage left before sunset with 2 soldiers, 1 captain, Renji's broken supplies, and the land deed that was supposed to become his death certificate. Nobody brought Mika to say goodbye. Nobody let him return to his room. Nobody gave him Sayo's ribbon. That stayed on the Judgment Hall floor, which felt right. Some things belonged exactly where they were abandoned. The ride south took 2 days. The guards spoke little. The captain avoided Renji's eyes. Renji spent most of the journey staring out the carriage slit, memorizing roads, wells, patrol posts, trade markers, and everything else a dead man was not supposed to need. He had no sword aura, no allies, no official inheritance, and no way to reach Micah. But he had one thing his family never respected properly. He remembered systems, not magical systems. Real ones. Water, heat, food, storage, roads, labor, authority, reputation. Nobles like to think power lived in bloodlines and blades. Renji knew power also lived in pipes, ledgers, grain stores, clean latrines, and the boring structures that kept people alive long enough to obey laws. At noon on the 3rd day, the carriage stopped where the last stone road dissolved into sand. The Sungrave expanse opened before him. It was not beautiful. Renji wanted to be clear about that. Poets could call deserts golden if they had enough wine and shade. From the ground, Sungrave looked like the world had been burned down to bone and nobody bothered to sweep. White gold dunes rolled under a sky without mercy. Black rock spines broke the horizon like ribs from a dead giant. Heat made the air shiver. Even the horses refused to step forward. The captain threw down a leather flask, a rusted short sword, a cracked shovel, a torn blanket, and a small sack of hard grain. Renji picked up the flask and shook it, half full. He looked at the captain. "That's it?" The captain's mouth tightened. The Duke said discipline would preserve a true Takamori. Renji nodded as if this deserved thought. My father once needed 3 servants to find his reading glasses while they were on his face. Discipline must be seasonal. One young soldier choked on a laugh. The captain pretended not to hear. Then he handed Renji the deed to Sungrave Lot 7. Beautiful paper. Red wax. Legal cruelty. Renji tucked it inside his coat instead of ripping it apart. His father had given him land as a joke. Jokes could become very dangerous if the wrong person kept the receipt. Before leaving, the captain lowered his voice. "Young lord, if you write an apology and swear obedience, perhaps the Duke may—" "No." The answer came out flat. The captain stopped. Renji looked north, toward the home that had chosen a lie for him, toward Mika's locked room, toward Sayo's lowered eyes, toward Daigo's smile. "Tell my father he should have sent more water." The captain said nothing. Renji lifted the rusted sword and inspected the edge. And a weapon that doesn't look like it wants to retire. The carriage turned back. The horses moved quickly once they faced away from the desert, which Renji found rude but understandable. The wheels rolled over stone, then dust, then distance. Soon the Takamori banner was gone. Renji stood alone. There was no witness now. No father watching from a raised chair. No brother grinning at his humiliation. No fiancée choosing silence with trembling fingers. For the first time in 17 years, nobody was standing over him telling him what he was allowed to build. Renji laughed once, dry and sharp. "Well," he said to the desert, "terrible neighborhood, but the privacy is excellent." Then he took 3 steps and nearly collapsed. The heat hit like a physical thing. His boots sank into the sand. The air burned his throat. He wrapped the torn blanket around his head and neck, rationed one tiny mouthful of water, and dragged the supplies toward the nearest black rock formation. He needed shade. That was the first rule. Not revenge, not pride, shade. The body did not care about dramatic motivation if the brain cooked before evening. He made it less than 500 paces before blue light opened in front of him. At first, Renji thought the desert had finally started melting his vision. Then the letters sharpened. Frontier Sovereign System Awakening Condition Met. Renji froze with one hand pressed into the hot sand. The panel hovered at eye level, clean and impossibly modern, with neat lines of text that looked more familiar than anything he had seen since rebirth. Host, Renji Takamori. Status, exiled noble. Legal land deed detected. Unclaimed frontier territory detected. Survival probability within 72 hours. 3.6%. Renji stared at the number. Bit rude. The system continued without caring about his dignity. Starter Oasis Package available. One-time deployment recommended. Package includes command shelter, basic water core solar pump unit, starter solar panels times 12, purification tank, auto irrigation field, fast growth shade trees times 20, storage shed, basic sanitation unit, perimeter alert stakes, emergency food pack, settlement claim core, low-grade mirage veil. Renji read it once, then again, then a third time because betrayal, dehydration, and reincarnation memories made a very strange soup inside the head. In his first life, he had read stories like this. Of course he had. He had been a tired Japanese student once, the kind who read web novels at midnight and imagined getting a cheat ability instead of homework. But when he was reborn into this world and spent 17 years being called useless, he stopped expecting life to follow any merciful genre rules. The cheat had not appeared when Mika struggled to breathe. It had not appeared when Sayo broke the engagement. It appeared here, after everyone left. Renji's first feeling was not joy. It was anger. Quiet, clean anger. "You waited until I was alone," he said. The system did not answer. Renji looked at the desert around him. The dead land, the legal grave, the place his family believed would erase him. Then he looked back at the package list. What's the cost? The panel shifted. Starter Oasis Package is a one-time survival and foundation deployment. Automatic construction support lasts 72 hours after activation. Future expansion requires missions, development points, resources, residents, territory stability, and defensive success. That was not a cost. That was a challenge with rules. Renji liked rules. Rules could be understood. Understood things could be improved. Improved things could be turned into weapons so quietly that arrogant men did not notice until the invoice arrived. Renji stood, pulled the deed from his coat, and held it up toward the burning sky. Deploy? The desert opened. Blue-white light spread from the deed in a perfect circle, racing across the sand faster than any horse. The ground trembled, but not like destruction, more like assembly. The sand flattened ahead of him. Pale stone tiles locked together in a square foundation. White wall panels unfolded out of the air and clicked into place, forming a compact command shelter with a flat roof, shaded entryway, dark glass windows, side vents, and a door that opened with a soft, mechanical hiss. Renji stopped breathing. Behind the shelter, a black cylindrical pump rose from the ground. Pipes drilled downward, guided by rings of light until a deep thump answered from below. A purification tank assembled beside it. 12 black solar panels unfolded on metal frames, each tilting toward the sun like a flower made by someone who hated inefficiency. Copper lines buried themselves under the sand, connecting panel, pump, tank, and shelter. Then green appeared. Small shoots burst from the dry earth in a crescent around the shelter. They grew fast enough that Renji took a step back. Trunks thickened. Silver-green leaves unfurled. Roots cracked through hardpan and drove downward. In minutes, 20 shade trees stood where there had been empty heat. Their leaves cast real shadow, real shade. In Sungrave, that was almost obscene. A rectangle of sand near the trees darkened and softened. Soil formed invisible layers. Auto-irrigation lines slid through it like black veins. Starter crops pushed up in neat rows. Grain, tubers, water-leaf herbs, and a thick vine with broad leaves. A storage shed formed, a clean wash station, a sealed sanitation unit, a low warning fence marked by black stakes with tiny lenses. Finally, a white claim pillar rose in front of the shelter, blank at the top, waiting for a name. The pump coughed once. Water poured into the purification tank. Renji walked toward it slowly, almost afraid speed would break the scene. He placed both hands under the tap and drank. Cold water hit his tongue. For a moment, he was not an exile. He was a human body that had expected death and received a mouthful of impossible mercy. He drank again, then stopped himself before greed took over. The habit of rationing had already entered his bones. The system panel opened beside the claim pillar. Settlement foundation established. Temporary designation, Sungrave Base. Register name. Renji touched the blank crest plate. His family crest was a wolf and sword. Strong, old, proud, and completely useless against thirst. Sunhaven, Renji said. The plate glowed. A symbol carved itself into the surface. A rising sun above 3 lines of flowing water. Settlement registered. Sunhaven claim. Low-grade Mirage Veil activated. Settlement visibility reduced beyond direct approach range. Warning, large trade roads, aerial scouts, close-range observers, and strong magic detection may bypass concealment. Upgrade through future missions. Renji read that part carefully. Good. The oasis would not announce itself to the whole border immediately. From far away, it would shimmer like heat haze unless someone came close enough to see through the veil. That meant time. Not safety, but time. His family would assume he was dying or dead. Sayo would go back to her blue silk and silent rooms. Dago would enjoy his victory. Let them. A slow reveal would hurt more. The system continued. Starter mission chain unlocked. Mission 1. Survive the first night. Reward, basic defense upgrade. Mission 2. Provide clean water to 5 non-hostile outsiders. Reward, residential cabin auto build ×3. Mission 3. Cultivate first harvest. Reward, expanded auto irrigation grid and seed printer. Mission 4. Establish settlement rules. Reward, administrative core and notice board. Mission 5. Repel first hostile intrusion. Reward, solar shock fence prototype and security map upgrade. Renji stared at the mission chain and the shape of the system finally became clear. This was not a sword skill. It was not a hero blessing. It was not a little survival trick to make him less pathetic before the desert killed him anyway. This was a kingdom-building cheat. The system did not ask him to defeat monsters for glory. It wanted him to build water, shelter, food, law, defense, trade, population, and territory. Every useful act would unlock the next layer. Every layer would turn Sunhaven from camp to hamlet, from hamlet to town, from town to city, and maybe one day into something that made the Takamori name look small. Renji looked at the black solar panels shining in the sun. His father had thrown away the son who understood the future. Beautiful. That night the shelter's cooling vent hummed softly above him. It was not modern air conditioning, but after Sungrave heat it felt close enough to divine intervention. The emergency food pack tasted like compressed flour trying to remember joy, but it kept him full. The sanitation unit almost made him laugh from sheer relief because after 17 years of medieval hygiene, a clean-sealed latrine felt like a revolution with plumbing. He survived the first night with no monsters, no raiders, and only one emotional collapse, which he considered efficient. The collapse happened near midnight. Renji stood outside under the shade trees, watching soft lights glow along the shelter wall. The oasis was small, but the cool air around the trees made the desert feel less invincible. Water clicked through the purifier. The panels rested under moonlight. The new symbol on the claim pillar glowed faintly. He imagined Mika here, not now, while the place was fragile, but later. A real room with clean air, a bed away from mold, warm food, filtered water, a clinic where physicians washed their hands because Renji would make it law if he had to threaten them with a wrench. Mika sitting under shade trees, laughing at him, asking whether his old man brain finally built something pretty. Renji pressed his hand against the claim pillar. "I'm coming back for you," he said. No system reward appeared. Good. Some promises were not quests. They were the reason quests mattered. At dawn, Mission 1 completed. The perimeter alert stakes upgraded into a proper warning fence. Thin, coppery lines connecting black posts around the core oasis. The system map inside the shelter marked movement, blind spots, energy reserves, crop growth, water output, and concealment strength. Renji spent the morning testing every function. He learned the fence could detect surface movement, but not deep burrowers. The Mirage Veil worked best during high heat but weakened at night. The water core was stable, but expansion would require more energy storage. The starter panels provided enough power for the pump, shelter, purifier, lights, and limited defense, but not enough for bigger structures. It was broken, yes. It was also hungry. A cheat city still needed input. People, materials, missions, defense, trade. Renji could work with that. By the second afternoon, Yuna Shirogane found him. She appeared first as a shadow on the ridge beyond the Mirage Veil. A slim figure wrapped in sand-colored cloth, bow in hand, silver hair tied messily behind her head. The veil must have confused her from a distance because she stood still for almost a full minute, staring down at the oasis like someone trying to decide whether thirst had become an artist. Behind her stumbled 5 others, an old man leaning on a broken spear shaft, a feverish woman, a teenage boy clutching one swollen wrist, and 2 children too dry-eyed to cry properly. Yuna saw the trees first, then the water tank, then the black solar panels. Her bow came up so fast Renji had to respect it. "Step away from the water," she called. Renji raised both hands and stepped aside. "You could start with hello." In Sungrave, hello is what people say before the knife comes out. That's depressing, but probably accurate. Her eyes moved over the shelter, the panels, the field, the shining pipes. Her face did not show simple shock. It showed calculation under shock. That made it better. A fool would have worshipped. A coward would have run. Yuna looked like she wanted to shoot the impossible thing just to see if it bled. "What is this place?" she asked. "Sunhaven." "That is a name, not an answer. Most places begin that way." She did not smile. Her gaze locked onto the solar panels. "What are those black plates?" Renji glanced back. "Sun collectors. Plates don't collect sun. These do." "Is that a joke?" "Not a useful one." The old man behind her swayed. The boy tried to catch him and winced from his injured wrist. The feverish woman's knees buckled. That ended the philosophical discussion about plates. Renji filled a cup from the purification tap and placed it on a flat stone halfway between them. Yuna did not move. "No poison," he said. "No debt for the first cup. Survival comes before bargaining." Her eyes narrowed. "And the second cup? Depends whether you shoot me before asking for it." That almost got the injured boy to laugh. Almost. Yuna approached like every step might be part of a trap. She smelled the water, touched it to her tongue, waited, then took one small sip. The change in her expression was tiny but devastating. People who grew up around easy water never understand what clean water does to the face of someone who expected to die thirsty. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes lowered. She carried the cup back to the feverish woman first. That was when Renji decided she was dangerous in a useful way. The group drank in turns, measured and careful. The old man introduced himself as Goro, a former caravan quartermaster whose trade route had collapsed after a raider attack. The feverish woman was Hana. The injured boy was Toma. The children were Nari and Ku. Yuna waited until everyone else had water before giving her name, which told Renji more than any biography could. "Yuna Shirogane," she said. "Renji Takamori." Her expression cooled the moment she heard the family name. He nodded. "Recently disowned, if that improves the flavor." "It does not." "Fair." She pointed at the shelter with her bow. "Did Takamori build this?" Renji laughed before he could stop himself. House Takamori thinks a drainage plan is suspiciously commoner. They did not build this. "Then who did?" Renji looked at the claim pillar. This was the first test. He could lie wildly, but Yuna had the eyes of someone who counted exits for a living. Bad lies would die quickly with her. "This territory has a development blessing," he said. "It activates under my claim. I don't fully understand it yet, but it builds things when Sunhaven survives, grows and follows certain rules." Yuna stared at him. "A blessing," she repeated. "Yes. That makes black sun plates, among other things. And clean water. Yes. And trees. Yes. In Sungrave." Renji gave her a tired smile. You can see why my day has been strange. She looked at the solar panels again. If this is a curse, it has excellent manners. Goro, who had recovered enough to inspect the storage shed with his eyes, muttered, Curses rarely include clean shelves. The system completed Mission 2 after the 5th outsider drank. Mission 2 complete. Provide clean water to 5 non-hostile outsiders. Reward acquired. Residential cabin auto build ×3. Blue light spread over the sand beyond the shade trees. Yuna's bow snapped up again. 3 cabin foundations formed in a neat row. Sand compressed into pale building blocks. Wall frames rose. Roof panels locked into place. Vents opened. Doors assembled with soft clicks. In less than 10 minutes, 3 small shaded cabins stood where nothing had been. Nobody spoke. Even Goro stopped looking for shelves. Toma whispered, The houses grew. Yuna stepped in front of the children like a person could protect them from architecture. Renji watched her face carefully. This was the reaction he needed to remember. Not screaming, not fainting. A sharper kind of shock. Her world had rules. Harsh rules, but rules. Water came from wells. Houses came from labor. Fields came from soil. Power came from blades, coins, priests, or nobles. Renji's system had just walked into that worldview, put up 3 cabins, and politely asked where the door handles should go. Yuna looked at him slowly. Can it build weapons? Renji almost smiled. That was exactly the first question a survivor should ask. Not yet. Yet, the blessing uses missions. Help people, build things, defend the claim, unlock more. Yuna's eyes narrowed. That sounds convenient for you. Yes. At least you admit it. Lying would waste both our time. She studied him for a long moment. Then she walked to one of the cabins, touched the wall, checked the seams, looked under the raised sleeping platform, opened the vent, and leaned back when cooler air brushed her face. Her suspicion cracked. Just a little. What makes the air cool? She asked. Airflow, shade, and the system's cooling core? That explains nothing. It explains more than magic house. Barely. Renji walked her to the solar panels. She kept a careful distance like they might bite. He explained the simple version. The black plates captured sunlight, turned it into energy, and that energy helped power the pump, lights, cooling vents, and defensive devices. Yuna touched the edge of one panel with 2 fingers and immediately pulled back because it was warm. So sunlight becomes water. Sunlight helps pull water, clean water, cool air, run tools, and eventually protect the settlement. That is too much work for light. Renji smiled. Light has been underemployed. Yuna looked at him then, really looked, and Renji saw the exact moment her opinion shifted from possibly cursed noble to possibly cursed noble who might be useful. That was progress. The first evening with residents was messy because miracles did not automatically create society. Hana needed a cool cabin and careful water. Toma needed his wrist set. The children needed food and someone to tell them the houses would not disappear if they slept inside. Goro needed a ledger before he trusted anything. Yuna needed a full perimeter check before she would sit down. Renji needed sleep, but the system had given him a city-building cheat, and apparently that came with the inability to stop making lists. Yuna caught him drawing expansion lines in the sand after midnight. You should sleep, she said. Renji did not look up. I am planning. You are swaying. Strategic swaying. She crouched beside the map. What is this line? Future outer wall. You have 6 people and 3 cabins. Walls are easier to plan before enemies arrive. Enemies already exist. Exactly. Yuna stared at the drawn wall, the water tank, the panels, the cabins, and the marked blind spots. You really mean to stay? Renji looked up. Yes. You could take supplies and run before anyone finds this place. Run where? Anywhere that doesn't cook people. My sister is north. My enemies are north. My name is Poison North. I can't save Mika by crawling back as a beggar. Yuna's face changed slightly at Mika's name. Renji continued quieter. If I want to bring her here one day, this place has to become more than a miracle nobody can defend. Yuna rested her arms on her knees. So you build a home before rescuing her. A home, a road, a clinic, walls, witnesses, trade, guards, and enough power that my father can't take her back with one document. The wind moved through the new trees. Yuna did not answer for a while. Then she said, "You speak like someone who has been trapped by paper before." Renji thought of the judgment hall. Sayo placing the ribbon on the floor. His father turning exile into mercy with one seal. Yes. Yuna nodded once as if that answer fit somewhere in her own history. She did not share more, and Renji did not ask. Trust was not a door you kicked open. It was a shelter you built and waited beside. The next 2 days moved quickly because the starter package's automatic support was still active. Mission 3 demanded the first harvest, and the auto-irrigation field behaved like farming with cheat codes written by a practical god. Waterleaf herbs matured in 2 days. Tubers swelled under dark soil. Grain heads formed absurdly fast, still not enough to feed a crowd, but enough to prove Sunhaven could produce food instead of just consume supplies. Hana, whose fever had eased, inspected the herbs and immediately began sorting medicinal uses. Goro weighed the tubers before celebrating, which Renji respected. Toma helped monitor irrigation lines and learned measurements with terrifying enthusiasm. The children collected fallen leaves from the shade trees like treasure. Yuna watched everything. She watched the field grow. She watched the panels tilt toward the sun each morning. She watched clean water flow through the purifier without priest chants, crystals, or noble permission. She watched Renji explain every ration instead of simply ordering people to obey. Most nobles Yuna had known treated commoners like tools that complained too much. Renji treated tools better than most nobles treated people, and somehow that made him more unsettling. Mission 3 completed at sunset. The expanded auto-irrigation grid unlocked, and a seed printer rose beside the field like a squat black-green box. When Renji fed it crop waste and selected approved seed types, it produced small sealed seed capsules ready for planting. Goro stared at it for nearly a full minute. "That box makes food future," he said. Renji nodded. "That is the most Goro way you could describe agriculture." Yuna leaned toward the machine. "Can it make poison plants?" "Probably later." She looked at him. "Kidding," he said, then checked the system list and added, "mostly." Yuna moved the children farther away from it. Mission 4 unlocked next. Establish settlement rules. That one mattered more than the buildings. Renji knew it immediately. A place with water and no rules became a battlefield. A place with food and no records became theft wearing a hungry face. A place with a miracle and no authority became bait for every raider, priest, noble, and merchant who believed power belonged to whoever grabbed first. So, Sunhaven's first laws were written before its first full wall. Emergency water was free to save life. Long-term water required the work, trade, medical exemption, or resident duty. Food was rationed by need and contribution. No weapon could be drawn near the water tank unless the settlement was under attack. No one could poison, hoard, damage, or privately control the water source. Children could work only safe tasks. Patients owed nothing until they could stand. Visitors would get one rescue ration, then they had to register or leave. Anyone who tried to claim Sunhaven under an outside lord would be treated as hostile until proven otherwise. Goro wrote everything on the notice board after the system built it beside the claim pillar. The administrative core linked to it, tracking resident names, duties, injuries, skills, ration status, and alerts. When Yuna pressed her thumb to the claim pillar, the system registered her as a resident under provisional security duty. She looked at the glowing panel that displayed her name. "This thing knows my name. You told it your name. I told you my name. I'm very organized." She gave him a flat look. "If your blessing starts reading my thoughts, I'm shooting the pillar." Reasonable boundary. The system offered to assign Yuna as scout candidate/security lead based on skills observed. Renji showed her the option instead of selecting it himself. That mattered. Yuna read the title slowly. "Security lead? If you want it. You trust me with that?" "No, I trust your suspicion. It seems healthier than most people's loyalty. For the first time, Yuna smiled without trying to hide all of it. Fine, yeah, she said. But if I'm responsible for security, you stop wandering alone while staring at invisible words. That feels restrictive. That is why it is called security. Goro, passing by with a ledger slate, said, I support the appointment. Renji sighed. A government is forming against me. Yuna looked at the notice board. Good, you need one. That was how Yuna became Sunhaven's first security chief before Sunhaven even had a proper gate. The first hostile intrusion came before dawn on the 5th day. It was not the Takamori family. That reveal would come later when Sunhaven had grown too real to dismiss. For now, Renji's family still believed he was dying somewhere in the Sungrave, or already dead. No official rider had seen through the mirage veil. No report had reached the fortress. Sayo had not heard a single word about water, solar panels, trees, or cabins. In her world, Renji was still the boy she had abandoned in a hall full of polished floors. The danger came from the desert itself. 3 scouts from a local raider band called the Glass Vultures found the oasis by accident. They must have been close enough for the mirage veil to fail, maybe following old animal tracks or searching for lost wells. Yuna spotted them first through the ridge shadows. Lean men wrapped in gray cloth, moving low, signaling with mirror flashes. Not thirsty wanderers, not traders. Men who saw water and immediately thought ownership could be corrected with knives. Renji woke to Yuna, kicking his boot. Scouts, she said. He sat up too fast and hit his head on the shelter shelf. Friendly? They are marking our location with signal glass. Unfriendly? Very. The system panel opened. Mission 5, active. Repel first hostile intrusion. Hostiles detected. 3 scouts. Additional raider group possible if signal succeeds. Prevent location broadcast. Renji's sleep vanished. They could not allow the oasis to be marked. If the Glass Vultures learned Sunhaven's exact position before the Mirage Veil was upgraded, a full raiding party could arrive before Renji had walls. Worse, rumor could spread uncontrolled through desert criminals before he had trade witnesses, defenses, or enough residents to survive attention. Yuna was already stringing her bow. I can take one before they run. One is not enough. I know. Renji opened the security map. The scouts were on the eastern ridge, just outside the warning fence, using a polished shard to flash toward a distant dune line. The system highlighted possible interventions: glare disruption from solar panels, emergency vine growth near field edge, alert stake overload, and low-grade sound pulse from the claim pillar. Renji stared at the options. The system has a noise function? Yuna looked at him. Useful? Annoying. Good enough. The plan was ugly, which meant it had a chance. Renji angled 2 solar panels manually toward the ridge. Yuna moved through the trees to a flank position. Toma, half awake and terrified but trying very hard not to look either, carried a basket of seed capsules to the field edge. Goro took Hana and the children into the command shelter and shut the reinforced door. Renji touched the claim pillar and selected Sound Pulse. The pillar screamed, not like a person, like metal scraping glass inside the skull. The nearest scout dropped his signal shard and clapped both hands over his ears. Yuna's arrow hit his calf before he could recover. The second scout turned to run, and Renji swung the solar panel frame into position. Dawn glare flashed hard across the ridge, not enough to blind forever, but enough to make a man lose the next 3 steps. Toma threw the seed capsules where Renji pointed. The system triggered emergency growth. Fast root vines burst from the sand and snapped around the scout's ankles. The third scout did the smart thing. He ignored the fight and raised a red flare tube. Renji's stomach dropped. If that flare went up, Sunhaven's secrecy died before breakfast. He grabbed the rusted sword and ran. This was, tactically speaking, stupid. Renji knew it was stupid while doing it. He had no aura, no real training beyond noble basics, and a sword that looked like it had been forged by a depressed spoonmaker. But the scout had the flare. The flare mattered more than Renji's dignity. The scout saw him coming and laughed. That laugh lasted until the warning fence discharged. Renji had overloaded the nearest stake before running, gambling that the scout would step across the line to get a clearer shot. Blue current snapped through the buried copper thread and hit the man's leg. He collapsed hard, flare tube rolling from his hand. Renji kicked it away, then pointed the rusted sword at his throat. "Don't," Renji said, breathing hard. "I'm having a difficult morning." The scout believed him. The fight ended in less than 2 minutes. All 3 scouts were captured alive. One had a wounded leg. One had vine burns. One kept blinking from solar glare and muttering that the black mirrors hated him. Yuna tied them separately and removed their signal shards, knives, and flare tubes. Goro emerged from the shelter, saw the prisoners, and immediately asked whether anyone had recorded the time of intrusion. Renji looked at him. "You are a gift." "I am a quartermaster," Goro said. "Gifts are poorly inventoried." Mission 5 completed as the sun rose. Mission complete. Repel first hostile intrusion. Reward acquired. Solar shock fence prototype. Security map upgrade. Mirage Veil reinforcement. The fence upgraded first. Black posts rose higher around the Oasis core, connecting through thin, coppery lines that could remain harmless for residents but stun-marked hostiles. The security map sharpened, showing terrain, movement, and threat direction with cleaner detail. Then the Mirage Veil deepened. Heat shimmer rolled outward from the claim pillar and settled around the settlement like invisible glass. Mirage Veil reinforcement active. Settlement visibility reduced to hostile observers beyond close approach. Long-distance signal interference improved. Warning: repeated traffic routes may still expose location. Renji exhaled. Good. They had bought time. Yuna stood beside him, watching the veil ripple across the dunes. Her face was dusty, tired, and still carrying that unsettled fascination from the first time she saw the panels unfold. "So now the desert hides us. Badly, but better than yesterday. You say comforting things very poorly. I'm out of practice." She looked at the captured scouts. "Their group will notice they're missing." "Yes." "How long?" "Depends how disciplined the glass vultures are. They are raiders, so either very soon or after drinking." Renji almost smiled. "Then we prepare for both." The prisoners confirmed the threat by noon. The glass vultures had been moving through the southern dunes, hunting for weak caravans and old wells. The scouts had seen green through the heat haze and come close enough to break the Mirage Veil. They had not signaled successfully, but one scout admitted their patrol route would be checked if they did not return by nightfall. That gave Sunhaven maybe 1 day before a larger band came searching. Renji did not panic. He wanted to, briefly, but Yuna looked ready to hit him if he wasted time emotionally. So he opened the next mission chain. Urgent mission. Prepare hidden oasis defense. Objectives: build decoy camp, reinforce fence, conceal water tank, assign watch rotations, craft non-lethal holding restraints, prepare emergency shelter protocol. Reward: outer wall foundation kit and guard post auto build. Yuna read the mission over his shoulder because he let her now. "Outer wall," she said. Renji nodded. "If we clear this before the main raiders arrive, we get a real defensive foundation. And if we fail, then the raiders get a very educational tour." She glanced at him. "You joke when you're scared?" "Yes." "Good. Easier to hear than screaming." The next hours turned Sunhaven into organized chaos. Goro created watch rotations and prisoner records. Hana covered the water tank with heat-colored cloth and moved medical supplies into the command shelter. Toma helped Renji build a decoy camp beyond the main veil. A few fake water jars, cold ashes, torn cloth, and tracks leading toward a dry ravine. The children collected reflective shells for glare traps. Yuna mapped firing angles and corrected Renji's fence placement twice, then a third time because he had been thinking like a machine instead of a person with legs. Renji accepted the insult because she was right. By sunset, the oasis looked different, less like a miracle showing off, more like a secret learning how to defend itself. That night, after everyone else tried to sleep, Renji found Yuna sitting near the claim pillar. watching the solar panels rest under the stars. She did not look at him when she spoke. When I first saw this place, I thought I was dying. Renji sat a careful distance away. That bad? That impossible. She nodded toward the panels. Water from black plates, trees from sand, houses from light, cool air from walls. Rules written by a boy abandoned with one bad sword. The sword is very bad. It is tragic. I know. That got the smallest smile from her. Then Yuna's expression turned serious again. I still don't know if you're a blessing, a curse, or something worse. Renji looked at Sunhaven. The cabins, the field, the fence, the glowing claim symbol. The people asleep inside structures that did not exist 5 days ago. Neither do I, he said. But if this power can build a place where people like us don't get thrown away, I'm going to use it. Yuna looked at him then. That was the moment her fascination shifted into something warmer, though neither of them had the language for it yet. She did not fall for him because he was handsome, powerful, or dramatic under moonlight. Yuna had survived too much to be impressed that cheaply. What got through her guard was simpler and more dangerous. Renji had been given a cheat that could have made him selfish, and his first instinct was to make rules for water, cabins for strangers, and a future clinic for a sister he could not reach yet. Years later, people would argue over which woman first truly understood Renji Takamori, the sword saint who would one day kneel only to his vision, the fire mage who would obsess over his solar machines, the water mage who would question her own temple after seeing his pump save lives, or Sayo Minazuki, whose regret would grow sharper every time Sunhaven rose higher without her. But the answer was standing beside him in the beginning, wrapped in desert cloth, suspicious of everything, and already planning where enemies would try to enter. Yuna Shirogane saw Sunhaven when it was still small enough to destroy, and she stayed. Just before dawn, the watchtower lens flashed red. Renji woke before Yuna could kick him this time, which he considered personal growth. The security map lit up with moving marks beyond the eastern ridge. More than 3. Far more. Hostile movement detected. Estimated group size, 18 to 24. Affiliation, probable glass vulture raider band. Arrival window, 51 minutes. Yuna climbed the ridge and looked out through the fading dark. Torches moved in a long, crooked line beyond the dunes. Too many to scare off with one trick. Too close to hide from completely. The raiders did not yet understand what Sunhaven was, but they knew something strange sat behind the heat haze, and men like that could not leave strange valuables alone. Renji stepped beside her. Below them, the oasis was quiet. 3 cabins, 1 shelter, 1 water tank, 12 panels, 20 shade trees, a field green enough to get people killed. 6 residents who had trusted him before trusting made sense. Yuna drew an arrow. This is where your hidden miracle gets tested. Renji looked at the approaching torches, then at the system mission, still waiting for completion. Prepare hidden oasis defense. Outer wall foundation kit. Guard post auto build. He felt fear. Of course he did. Fear meant his brain was still attached. But beneath it, something steadier had started to form. His family thought he was gone. Sayo thought the engagement ended before his story began. Dago thought the desert had swallowed the useless sun. Let them keep thinking that. For now, Sunhaven belonged to the people who had seen it, questioned it, and chosen to protect it. Renji touched the claim pillar. The solar panels slowly tilted toward the first edge of sunrise. The shock fence hummed awake. "Wake everyone," he said. "No panic, no wasted water. No hero moves unless they're funny and useful." Yuna's mouth curved. "That last rule is going to get you killed." "Probably later." The first red line of sun broke over the dunes, catching the black panels until they gleamed like blades. The glass vultures came closer. Renji Takamori stood at the edge of the impossible oasis his family had not yet discovered. And for the first time since the trial, he did not feel like a discarded son waiting for judgment. He felt like a lord defending the first secret of his future kingdom. The glass vultures came toward Sunhaven at dawn, and for the first time since his exile, Renji Takamori understood something very important about owning land. The moment you made a dead place valuable, someone with worse manners would come to inspect it with weapons. From the ridge above the oasis, the raiders looked like dark insects crawling through gold dust. 18, maybe 24, moving in loose formation with gray scarves around their faces, curved blades at their hips, and bone charms tied to their saddles. They were not marching like soldiers. Soldiers loved straight lines because officers liked pretending the world respected paperwork. Raiders moved with more sense than that. Spread out, careful, patient. The leader clearly knew Sungrave could punish stupidity faster than any knight. Renji stood beside the white claim pillar. One hand resting on the sun and water crest carved into it. Behind him, Sunhaven was still small enough to be ruined in one bad morning. 1 command shelter, 3 cabins, a water tank, 12 black solar panels, a starter field, 20 shade trees, a storage shed, a sanitation unit, a reinforced mirage veil, and a shock fence that had only existed for a day. Inside the shelter, Hana kept the children quiet with wet cloths and low whispers. Goro had already hidden the land deed resident slate and first ration records beneath the floor compartment, because apparently the old man considered documentation a sacred organ. Toma stood near the auto-irrigation field, with a basket of seed capsules clutched to his chest like a boy carrying explosive vegetables. Yuna Shirogane crouched on the ridge above the eastern approach, bow in hand. Silver hair tucked under desert cloth. Her eyes tracked the raiders with calm precision. She was not a swordswoman. That was important. Yuna was a scout archer, the kind of girl who saw danger before it introduced itself. Her knives were for emergencies. Her bow was her real voice, and judging from her expression, she had a lot to say this morning. "They're not rushing," she called down. Renji looked at the security map floating before him. Red marks crawled closer through the system display. "I was hoping for stupid." "Stupid dies fast in Sungrave." "Unfair, we've had a very busy week." The system panel updated before Yuna could answer emergency defense mission. Unlocked. Protect hidden oasis from organized hostile incursion. Pre-battle support authorized due to settlement vulnerability. Temporary defense arsenal available, solar sentry stakes ×6. Flash lens turret ×2. Auto stun dart post ×4. Gate lockdown node ×1 warning. All defensive devices are low-grade prototypes. Excess use may damage solar storage, reduce pump output, or cause system maintenance debt. Renji stared at the words, and a slow smile crept across his face. Yuna saw it from the ridge and immediately narrowed her eyes. "That smile is illegal. The system just gave me weapons." "That smile is very illegal." Renji selected deployment. The oasis answered. Black metal stakes rose from the sand along the eastern approach, each topped with a small rotating lens and a copper-ringed emitter. 2 squat turret frames unfolded near the gate line, their mirrored faces turning toward the rising sun. 4 narrow dart posts clicked into place behind the shock fence, angled low to target legs instead of chest. A gate node assembled at the entry gap. Not a full gate yet, but enough to create a temporary barrier of reinforced panels if triggered. Toma stared at the devices. "Are those friendly?" Renji looked at the system labels. "They're friendly to us. That is not the same thing." Yuna slid down from the ridge, landed beside Renji, and inspected the nearest solar sentry stake. She did not touch it. "Smart girl. What does this one do?" "Marks hostile movement and fires low-grade shock bolts." "And that shiny ugly thing?" "Flash lens turret. It blinds and disorients." "And the thin posts?" "Stun darts non-lethal unless someone has a very dramatic allergy to consequences." Yuna gave him a flat look. "You say that like this is normal." Renji looked at the solar-powered defensive devices rising around a hidden oasis, built by a system in a death desert. Normal left days ago. The raiders slowed when the Mirage Veil thickened. From outside, Sunhaven did not show itself as a full oasis. The veil bent heat and light, turning trees into wavering shadows and solar panels into dull smears behind the haze. But the glass vultures had already lost 3 scouts in Part 1, and careful men did not ignore missing scouts. They knew something was here, they did not know how much. The leader lifted a hand. His men spread wider. Yuna clicked her tongue. He's checking the veil edges. Then he's too useful to kill immediately. I hate when you say that. You prefer useless enemies? I prefer enemies who trip over rocks before speaking. Renji almost laughed.